the top 10 most terrifying places in the world. At number 10, the Riddle House. The Riddle House in Palm Beach County, Florida, was originally a funeral parlor. The Victorian house was dismantled and rebuilt in Yesteryear Village at the South Florida Fairgrounds. In the 1920s, the house became privately owned by Carl Riddle. Joseph, one of Riddle's former employees, committed suicide by hanging himself in the attic of the house. Joseph, for whatever reason, hated men, and displays this hatred by attacking men who enter the attic. One man had a lid flung at his head, and men are no longer allowed in the attic. Other places in the house are haunted as well, with furniture being frequently moved. At number 9, Helltown. In the northern part of Summit County, Ohio, is Helltown. In the 1970s, Boston Township was the site of a government buyout and the subsequent mass eviction of the citizens. The houses were intended to be torn down and the land used for a national park, but the plans never quite materialized. Legends spawned wildly, and who can blame them? Driving through the dark, wooded landscape was enough to give you the chills even when it was populated, let alone when you had to drive by the boarded-up houses standing next to the burnt-out hulks of others, as the local fire department used some buildings for practice. Whether based on a kernel of truth or cooked up in the heads of creative visitors, the persistent legends of Helltown add to the creep factor. The steep Sanford Road drop-off, immediately followed by a dead end, is aptly named the end of the world. If you get stuck at this dead end for too long, according to many of the ghost story enthusiasts, you may meet your end at the hands of many members of the endless parade of freaks patrolling the woods. Satanists, Ku Klux Klan members, an escaped mental patient, an abnormally large snake, and mutants caused by an alleged chemical spill proudly march in this parade, and if you stray from the roads, you may find Boston Cemetery, home to a ghostly man, grave robbers, and quirkiest of all, a moving tree. At number 8, Stull Cemetery. Stull, Kansas is a tiny unincorporated town in Douglas County. 10 miles west of Lawrence and 13 miles east of Topeka puts it far away from anything resembling a large population center. The population of Stull is approximately 20 people, but don't let the deceptively quaint village fool you. A darker side lurks behind the bushes and in the shadows. In the early 20th century, two tragedies rocked the tiny settlement. First, a father finished burning a farm field, only to find the charred corpse of his young son in the aftermath. The second incident to occur was a man went missing and was later found hanged from a tree. As far as legends go, the infamous cemetery is where you can still find your fill of supernatural lore. The book Weird US has this to say on Stull Cemetery. There are graveyards across America that go beyond merely being haunted and enter into the realm of diabolical. They are places so terrifying that they say the devil himself holds courts with his worshippers there. The cemetery on Emmanuel Hill in Stull, Kansas is one of those places. Rumors exist stating that Stull Cemetery is one of the 7 gateways to hell. While the old church is now demolished, many attempt to sneak in at night for a peek at the unsavory goings-on. But be warned, the police patrol heavily, especially on Halloween and the spring equinox. The place is supposed to be so unholy, in fact, that some claim the Pope John Paul II refused to allow his plane to fly over eastern Kansas on his way to an appearance in Colorado. The validity of this last claim is up for debate, but none can deny that, legends or not, Stull Cemetery is a terrifying place to be. At number 7, the Ridges. Originally known as the Athens Lunatic Asylum, the Ridges was renamed after the state of Ohio acquired the property. The hospital saw hundreds of lobotomies and often declared masturbation and epilepsy to be the causes of insanity in patients. Athens, Ohio, is listed as the 13th most haunted place in the world, as per the British Society for Psychic Research. The nearby Ohio University, which currently owns most of the property on which the Ridges is located, is said to be heavily haunted. The notorious rapist Billy Milligan was housed at the facility for years. The most famous story, however, is that of a 50-year-old female patient who ran away and was missing for 6 weeks. She was found dead in an unused ward. She had taken off all her clothes, neatly folded them, and laid down on the cold concrete floor, where she subsequently died. Through a combination of decomposition and sun exposure, her corpse left a permanent stain on the floor, which is still visible today. Her spirit now haunts the abandoned ward. At number 6, Humberstone and La Noria. These two abandoned mining towns in Chile were recently featured on an episode of the Sci-Fi Channel's show Destination Truth. In 1872, the town was founded as a saltpeter mine, and business boomed. However, after several heavy blows, including the Great Depression, the business declined and collapsed in 1958, and the towns of Humberstone and its surrounding towns were abandoned by 1960. Treatment of workers in both towns bordered on slavery, and the towns are now completely derelict. It is rumoured that the dead of La Noria's cemetery rise at night and walk around the town, and ghostly images frequently show up in photographs in Humberstone. These towns are so terrifying that the residents of nearby Iquique refuse to enter them. The former residents never left and can be seen walking around, and children can be heard playing. The cemetery of La Noria, regardless of whether its occupants actually walk at night, contains open graves where bodies are fully exposed, leaving you to wonder why. Is it ghosts or grave robbers? As if either prospect is particularly appealing. At number 5, Byberry Mental Asylum. The Philadelphia State Hospital of Byberry, or known simply as Byberry, was the poster image for patient maltreatment. The hospital, in its most popular form, was founded in 1907 and known as the Byberry Mental Hospital. It exceeded its patient limit quickly, maxing out at over 7,000 in 1960. It housed everything from the mentally challenged to the criminally insane. Due to its atrocious conditions and the subhuman treatment of its patients, the hospital was closed and abandoned in 1990. It has since become a nuisance for the neighbourhood, as it was a breeding ground for vandals, arsonists, Satanists, and urban explorers. It was demolished in 2006 in spite of the fear of spreading asbestos, which is what kept it standing for 16 years. The terrifying aspect of this location isn't so much the hauntings or the unsavoury characteristics that lurked after dark, although you would have been wise to be wary of both of them while exploring the building. The terror here comes from the fact of how the hospital was run. Human excrement lined the hallways, which were also where many patients slept. The staff were abusive and frequently exploited and harassed patients. One patient had a tooth pulled out without any anaesthetic, while another killed and dismembered a female patient. Although the killer, Charles Gable, was never found, the victim's body was found strewn across the property. Her teeth were found being played with by another patient. Even as the hospital was in the process of closing, 2 released patients were found dead in the Delaware River 2 successive days after their release. Perhaps that gate in Stoll Cemetery opens here. At number 4, Leap Castle. While this Irish castle is perhaps the most popular location featured on the list, it is worth recapping the long and often gruesome history. Although it was built by the O'Bannons in the late 15th century, the castle was taken over by the ruling O'Carrolls, to whom the O'Bannons were subject. After the death of Mulrooney O'Carroll, a fierce rivalry erupted, culminating in 2 brothers struggling for control. One of the brothers, a priest, was brutally murdered in his own chapel in front of the family by the other brother. This chapel is now known as Bloody Chapel, for obvious reasons. Many people held prisoner and even executed at the castle. The castle is rumoured to be haunted by a vast number of spirits, including a violent hunched beast known only as the Elemental. It is most recognisable by the accompanying smell of rotting flesh and sulphur. While renovating the castle, workers discovered an oubliette, which is a dungeon accessible only through a ceiling hatch, into which prisoners are thrown, then forgotten and left to die. This particular oubliette contains 3 cartloads of human remains, and was filled with spikes to impale those thrown into its depths. At number 3, Shades of Death Road. This New Jersey road winds through 7 miles of countryside, and along that stretch it gives us no definitive clues as to the origin of the eerie name. And for those wondering, Shades of Death is not a nickname, it's the official road name. While the explanation for this highly unusual name has been lost, many theories abound. Some say that murderous highwaymen would rob and kill those along the road. Others say that the reason was because of the violent retaliations by the locals against the highwaymen, resulting in their lynched corpses being hung up as a warning. Some attribute it to the 3 murders that occurred in the 20s and 30s. The first murder saw a robber beating his victim over the head with a tire iron. The second saw a woman decapitate her husband and bury the head and body on separate sides of the road. And the third consisted of Paul Bill Cummins, who was shot and buried in a mud pile. Some attribute it to the massive amounts of fatal car crashes, while others consider it to be the fault of wildcats from the nearby Bear Swamp. The most likely explanation, however, is that malaria-bearing mosquitoes terrorised the locals year to year, and the remoteness of the area prevented good medical attention from being prominent. This is supported by the fact that in 1884 most of the swamps in the area were drained. Gruesome history and spooky name aside, you have much to fear along this byway. South of the I-80 overpass lies an officially unnamed lake that most will tell you is called Ghost Lake. This lake is frequently the home of spectre-like vapours, and the sky is supposed to be unusually bright, no matter what time of night you are there. As per the name, ghosts of the highwaymen's victims roam the area, and are the most frequent in the abandoned cabin across the lake. The dead-end road, known as Lenape Lane, is home to thick fogs and apparitions, and you may be chased off the road by a white light. I'll let Wikipedia detail the most disturbing aspect of the road. One day during the 1990s, some visitors found hundreds of Polaroid photographs scattered in the woods just off the road. They took some and shared them with Weird NJ, who published a few as samples. Most of the disturbing images showed a television changing channels. Others showed a woman or women, blurred and somewhat difficult to identify, lying on some sort of metal object, conscious but not smiling. Local police began an investigation after the magazine, and they couldn't find a single photo. They had disappeared shortly afterwards. At number 2, Two Sling Genocide Museum. Welcome to Phnom Penh, Cambodia, home of the Tuol Sleng Genocide Museum. This former high school was converted in 1975 to Security Prison 21 by Khmer Rouge. The prison was used as a base to torture and murder prisoners. Most of the prisoners were former soldiers and government officials from the Lon Nol regime. However, the Khmer Rouge leaders' paranoia soon caught up with them, and they began shipping people from their own ranks to prison. Many prisoners were tortured and tricked into naming their family and associates, who were then also arrested, tortured, and murdered. The ghosts of the estimated 17,000 victims of Tuol Sleng continue to roam the halls, and odd happenings around the place have often been attributed to them, and it isn't hard to see why. Most were forced to confess to crimes they didn't actually commit. Although most victims were Cambodians, many foreigners fell victims to the death machine, including Americans, French, a New Zealander, a Briton, Australians, Arabs, Indians, Pakistanis, and Vietnamese. Only 12 people are thought to have survived. To close the entry on this sad history, I'll leave you with the actual security regulations, the 10 rules all prisoners had to abide by. All imperfect grammar is said in context due to poor translation. 1. You must answer accordingly to my question. Don't turn them away. 2. Don't try to hide the facts by making pretexts this and that. You are strictly prohibited to contest me. 3. Don't be a fool, for you are a chap who dare to thwart the revolution. 4. You must immediately answer my questions without wasting time to reflect. 5. Don't tell me either about your immoralities or the essence of the revolution. 6. While getting lashes or electrification, you must not cry at all. 7. Do nothing, sit still and wait for my orders. If there is no order, keep quiet. When I ask you to do something, you must do it right away without protesting. 8. Do not make pretext about Kampuchea Krom in order to hide your secret or traitor. 9. If you don't follow all the above rules, you shall get many lashes of electric wire. If you disobey any point of my regulations, you shall either get 10 lashes or 5 shocks of electric discharge. And finally, number 1. The Mines of Paris. The seemingly infinite tunnels that run below the streets of Paris should not be confused with the catacombs of Paris, the famous underground ossuary, although the mines are also mistakenly referred to as the catacombs. Exploring the mines is illegal, and penalties include hefty fines. The mines were used to dig out minerals from Paris' various sediment, as it was submerged for millions of years, and the tunnels are what got left behind. The mines are now unkempt, unpatrolled, and very unsafe. As far as the legends go, ancient cults and creatures patrol the depths. Spirits dwell in the infinite shadows, and if one wanders deep enough and survives, they may even enter Hades itself. As far as reality goes, those legends can take a back seat. The tunnels stretch for close to 600 kilometers throughout the Parisian underground, and most of them are unmapped. Saying it is easy to get lost is an understatement. It is nearly impossible to not get lost. Many parts of the catacombs are hundreds of feet below street level. Some hallways are flooded, or so narrow you have to crawl through them. There are holes that drop hundreds of feet, and manholes that are unreachable, luring unwary urban explorers with false promises of freedom. The infinite underground maze absorbs sound, mutes it, making it unlikely that you will hear someone yelling for help, even if they're not far away. Or worse, making it unlikely someone will hear you. Thousands of human bones litter the tunnels, due to overcrowding in many of Paris's cemeteries. Weird paintings adorn the walls. Are they ancient? New? Warnings? Pleas for help? If you have claustrophobia, you will want to avoid the mines at all costs. If you don't have claustrophobia, you probably will after a trip to the mines. Bring plenty of batteries, backup flashlights, clean water, a friend, and say a prayer before entering the mines of Paris. You will need them all.